Hey everyone, today we're going to be learning about a new topic in the programming world, which is object-oriented programming and classes. Object-oriented programming, also known as OOP, is a style of programming characterized by the identification of classes of objects which are closely linked to the functions with which they are associated with. The OOP language allows you to break your program into bit-sized problems that can be easier to solve. This new technology promises greater programmer productivity, better quality of software, and fewer maintenance costs. In object-oriented programming, a class is a blueprint for creating objects, providing initial values for member variables or attributes, and implementing behavior. The user-defined objects are created using the class keyword. Now that you know all about object-oriented programming and classes, let's get into today's project, which is creating a class called product. Well, the output of this project will ask us for some information about a product that we have made, such as the name of the product, the cost price, the selling price, and much more. Once the computer has gained all of that information, it will return to us the amount of profit or loss that we have gained or lost from selling our product. So make sure to stay tuned to the end of this video to see the amazing output. But also follow along with me in typing the code. Now, let's get coding. Hey everyone! So, welcome back to NPStation. As you can see, I have opened a blank new file here and I've called it product.py. So we are going to be using Visual Studio to type our code for today's project. First line of code is we need to create our class. So you can see I've just typed in class here, and now we just need to assign our class name. And I'm going to call it product. And make sure to end it with a colon. Now here we need to put in our def, 2 underscores, init, 2 underscores, and in parentheses we'll have our self. Let me explain this init method. So the init method is the Python equivalent of the C++ constructor in an object-oriented approach. So the init function is called every time an object is created from a class. And the init method lets the class initialize the object's attributes and serves no other purpose. It is only used within classes. So you can see here that we're using it in our class product. And this self is the object in our class. So the next line of code, here what we need to do is create many variables for our project. So let me just explain the output of our code. So when we, at the end of this project, when we're done with all the code, and when we click the run button, it's going to ask us for the ID of our product, the name of our product, the cost price of our product, which means like how much it costs to just make our product, and then the selling price, which means how much you're going to sell your product for. We also need to set a margin, and we're going to have a remarks variable. So let's go ahead and just create all of these variables in our init method. So let's go ahead and start with the first one, which is our ID, and then we're going to set that to 0. Our next one is self.name, which is going to hold the name of our product. Make sure that equals to a blank string. We'll have self.p cost price, which will also, this will be equal to 0.0, so you can have a decimal number. And then self.p selling price, which will also be equal to 0.0. We'll also need a self.margin variable, which will be equal to 0.0, and then a self.remarks, which will be equal to a blank string. So those are all the variables for this project. Now let's move on to the next function. So def, and this function is going to be called setRemarks. And in parentheses, make sure to have our self object. So here we need to type in a if condition. So if self.margin is greater than 0, then our self.remarks are going to be equal to profit. Make sure that it is in double quotes. And then, don't worry, I will explain this very soon. We're going to have else self.remarks and this will be equal to loss. Alright, so let me go ahead and just explain this code real quick. So self.margin is actually going to be equal to the selling price minus the cost price. So that's going to be the margin. And then if that is greater, so that whatever that number is, if it's greater than 0, it's a profit, less than 0, it's a loss. So that is kind of very self-explanatory. I hope you guys understood that. Next function. Let's go ahead and type our user input function in here. We're going to have self in the parentheses. So this is where we're going to write all of the statements that our computer is going to ask the user. So first one is we're going to use our first variable, which is our ID. This is going to be equal to int. We need, since it's going to be an integer value, and then input, and here we're going to have enter the ID for the product. You guys can type in anything you would like in this statement. It just has to be, relatable to what we're trying to ask the user to give the ID. Next one is the name. So this is not going to be an integer value, so we're just going to write in input, and then here enter the name of your product. There we go. Our next variable was the cost price. So here, this is going to be a floating number, and then we'll also have input, and in double quotes, we need to have enter the cost of the product. And then we need the next one is selling price. This will also be a floating integer. So, and then in parentheses input, enter the selling price of your product. Almost done here. And we also need our self.margin. So like I was saying before, the self.margin is going to be equal to the selling price self.p selling price. There we go. So our margin is going to be equal to selling price minus the self.cost price. And there we go. And then we also need to call our set remarks function at the end here. Let's go ahead and do that. So make sure to write this last line of code, or else it will not call this function. But when you do call it here, after the computer asks us all of these statements, it's going to come to this line, or going to this line of code first, I guess, and it's going to calculate the selling price minus, let me fix that, minus the cost price of the product, and then we're going to go to the set remarks function since we've called it in the next line of code, and it's going to tell us if it's a profit or a loss. So that's all for our user input function. Now let's go to our last function, which is we're going to call it get details. And in parentheses, self. There we go. So here we're just going to have a long print function in this function. So we're going to have print. I think we'll just make this an F string. And in double quotes, we need to have our ID. So let's print out, it'll give us our ID here. And now we have to use that self.pid variable, comma, and then we need to print out the name of the product, just like this. So we'll have self.pname, comma, and then we need the cost price. So just like that. And then the variable we need is p cost price. Self.p cost price. There we go. And then after that, we need our selling price. So we'll go ahead and do that. Selling price, comma, and here we need that variable. So p selling price. And finally, we just need two more variables in here, which is self.margin and self.remarks. There we go. So this is that long print function. And actually, let's just make a few changes in here. So for the cost price, right in the double quotes after the colon, just put in a $sign, and same with the selling price right there. So it's going to print the $sign as well. And that's all for the get details function. Just that one line of code. We just have a few more lines to type in, which are very easy. So we're going to have our P equal to product, which is that class. We're just calling it here. And then P dot user input. We're calling our user input function. And then we also need to call our get details function. Make sure you type these last 3 lines of code, which are very important, or else none of these functions are going to get called. Alright, well guess what? You guys are done with your code for today's project. Let's go ahead and run this and see if it works. So it should first ask us, for the ID for the product. So first line, it works. Enter the ID for the product, just make up a random set of numbers here. Next one is the enter the name of your product. Let's say, how about basketball? The cost of my product. So how much it costs to just make this product itself. How about $12? Then we're going to have the selling price. So how much am I going to sell this product on the market for? Let's say $32, very expensive. So here you can see it gives us the ID that we have given, the name of our product, which is a basketball, the cost price, which is $12, the selling price, which is $32, and guess what? We got a $20 profit. Let me just explain this output right here. So this whole part is just printing the ID, the name, the cost price, and selling price. And that is just the details that we have already given to the computer. The last part is what the computer is calculating, which is the margin, right? Which the margin, you can see we have the code here, is the selling price minus the cost price. Once it calculates that, it will tell us if it is a profit or a loss. So let's try one which will print out a loss for us. So let's see. Alright, so let's go ahead and run this again. ID for the product. The name, let's say my product is a doll. And then the cost of my product. Let's say it cost $100 to make this doll. And the selling price, I'm selling for $15. So here, the ID, and then the name, which is the doll. The cost price is $100, selling price $15, and you can see it's an $85 loss. So now you know that your whole code should be working. I hope you guys enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to NPStation. But that's all for today. Keep reading, keep coding, and stay safe.